So, thank you for joining in. And so today I wanted to finish up part two, finish up this series called Becoming an ACA Superhero. And so this is part two of it called How to Sell More ACA. And so last month, I want to just kind of review, what we talked about. We really focused on how we could sell ACA year round. And we talked about a lot of the special enrollment periods that you might be using this time of year to help people. And then we talked about where to find these people that were needing help, maybe that were losing coverage or that were in the low income, portion of that chart that you could help right now. We talked about making, these referral partners that will send people to you. And we talked about a lot of those. And then we just kind of brainstormed some other marketing ideas as well. And so that's kind of where we left off last month. And so I just wanted to kind of follow up with that and say, like, so now what? Like, we've got all of those ideas, we've got the knowledge about the SEPs, but so what do we do now? And so what I thought is that it would be helpful to set a goal because I know I was really excited about all of the ideas that we had. And I thought, I'm going to get out and do a lot of those things. And then we went on vacation. My husband had arm surgery. And honestly, I've not done any of those. I've not been out and talked to anyone. I've not gotten out and left any cards anywhere or anything. And so when we were up in Greenville a couple of months ago at the Clay Peak convention, he had so many super successful ACA agents and just agency owners, and they all kind of got up and spoke a little bit. And one thing that I kept hearing over and over was just how important it is to set a goal and be intentional, and that will really help you be successful. And so there's a picture of me and Lisa. We got to meet Coach Chris, and I don't know if any of you follow her on YouTube, and she's great. She has a lot of good trainings available, but just everybody kept talking about knowing your numbers and just really just that being intentional with where you want to go and what you want to do with things and not just getting sidetracked and losing your focus. And I think that happens to me sometimes because I have other duties and I know you all do. And so I guess I just thought that it would be good to kind of take a minute today and just take time to set that goal and talk about how important that is. And so some of the quotes I heard up there is like, if you aim for nothing, you'll hit it every time. And I guess that's kind of what I've done this past month. I didn't really have a goal. I just kind of thought, well, I'll do that. I'll get out and talk to people or I'll leave some of my cards. And then I never did. So research really supports the importance of setting goals. In preparation for this, I kept listening to a lot of like TED Talks and podcasts, and it was amazing. Almost every time people would talk about how important it was, to set goals and how they contributed a lot of their success to the goals. And just that having a goal creates meaning and purpose. And so that's kind of why I wanted to do this today. It just kept coming to my mind after I left. When I went up there, I was thinking, well, tell me something that's going to really help me. Like, I want to know how to sell more ACA, not just about setting a goal. We hear stuff like that a lot. And it's kind of like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, I want to know something that's really going to help me. But all of these really successful people felt like that's what's going to help. So I thought I'll just take some time today and share that. And maybe it'll help you and maybe it'll help me too to stay more focused. So, in just doing research for this, one thing I kept seeing, and some of you are probably familiar with this, and it's, a SMART goal, and that SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And so I started to send out this little sheet of paper that I had found that kind of helped you write that goal. And then I thought, well, if I send that out, people know it's about goals. I don't think anybody's going to want to listen because you're probably like me and you think, oh, I know about setting a goal and how important that is. So if you have a second, just grab a sheet of paper. Maybe you may already have one, but I've gotten one too because I'm actually going to do this today and try to hold myself a little more accountable because I do want to get better at selling ACA and I want to sell more of it. And so I think this might be something that will help me stay more focused with it as well. So if nothing else, I'm kind of preaching to myself today. So starting out, the S stands for specific. And you want to clearly state your goal. Just think about what do you want to achieve. And of course, goals can be about anything. It can be about your nutrition or exercise or your finances. But since this webinar is about how to sell more ACA, I think that's what we would want to write our goal about today. So that's what I'm going to be writing mine on. But in doing the research for this webinar, I came across this study from Cornell University, and I just thought this was interesting. They found that when you're writing a goal, you're more likely to achieve it if you write it using the third person perspective. So when you're writing a goal, instead of saying like, I want to sell more ACA, they found that it helps you be more successful in achieving it if you use the third person. And like I would say, Heather wants to sell more ACA. So if you've got your sheet of paper, and I'm going to do this myself, like let's just take a second and write that much so far, like your name and wants to sell more ACA. I feel like I'm a school teacher again, telling you to write something. So I apologize if it sounds that way. So then the next part, the M stands for be measurable. How will I know when I have succeeded? Okay. And how will I track my progress? And so when I was just kind of thinking about this, an easy way I think for us all to track it is, or specifically for me, I know, is by how much my commission check is every month. And I remember when I first started, I was talking to Erica one day in the office and I said, oh, if I could just ever make $500 a month in commission on ACA, like that would be awesome. And thankfully, I reached that pretty easily without even much trying. It just kind of, people came in and it happened. But now I think I want to, you know, thankfully I've gone past that 500, but I would like to, make it even more. And so I know everybody's in a different situation. Some of you may make $30 a month or $40 a month right now on ACA. And, so just think about like, how will you know when you've met this goal? And I know we'd all like to make $1 million selling it, but, just think about how would you know when you have succeeded at this goal? And then you could track your progress. I think easily you could track it with your commission every month. And so I would say, the next thing that we kind of want to add to this goal is I want to make, and let's just put blank for a second each month, okay? Well, I guess I should say Heather wants to, since we're doing it in the third person. So take a second and write that. So I just put Heather wants to make blank dollars a month because that's going to, before we fill in that amount, this was another thing that I kept coming across in preparing for this is that your goal needs to be attainable. You need to feel like it is something that you can reach. And one quote I heard is that goals need to require some resistance. It doesn't. When I said that about making the $500 a month, well, I did a little bit. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did get out and do some stuff, but I didn't have to do a whole lot. And so, you want it to be something that you'll reach, but you'll have to put some effort into it. It wouldn't just happen if you didn't do anything. And I think it was on a TED talk, I heard, that it's like Goldilocks, how she found the porridge that was just right. So you want to set the goal where it's not too easy, but you don't want it to be too hard either. So, just take a second and think about what you think would be unattainable goal for you that's not going to be too easy, that would require a little bit of work, but not be so hard that you're just going to give up and get frustrated. So I've kind of come up with what I think, and I filled that in on mine. And then the R stands for relevant. Why is this goal important to you? And I know that all of us in our heart, we have an overreaching goal of we just love to help people. We sympathize when we talk to people and they don't have health insurance or, whatever their situation. And that is really ultimately, I think, why we all want to do this and we want to help people. We have a calling on our heart to do that. But, also we do want to get paid and that's important too. And so that's kind of what I guess I wanted to talk a little bit more today is, when you set a goal, look at the reasons for accomplishing it and how that might impact your everyday life. And that's going to be different for each person. It might be that you're just making extra money so you can buy those Lululemon leggings or whatever, or, take your family on a vacation. It could just, whatever that means for you. It might be, getting out of debt. That money's going to help you with that. But just kind of, think about what that's going to look like in your everyday life, as well as how it fits in to what you want, long term. And so, if that extra money you make from ACA, if you can put it towards your mortgage and get out of debt, then, maybe you can retire early or you'll have that money coming in every month. So maybe that means that in the summer when your kids are out of school, you can kind of cut back and spend more time with them. Just, kind of figure out why this is even important for you, like what's going to motivate you to try to accomplish this goal. And then the T stands for time based. And so, when do we want to have this goal accomplished? And so, what I put down, the figure I put down, I think that would be something that could be attainable by January of 2026. If I kind of work all summer, work up until open enrollment, doing some things that we're going to talk about later, and then we have open enrollment, I feel like by January of 2026 is when I can accomplish this goal. So let's add another sentence to it, or you could just put a comma, I guess, and add, the time part. So by and I put the quote there by Dan Miller. I don't know if any of you listen to his podcast. It's the 48 days, and he's written a book about 48 days to like the life or the job you love, something like that. And he's good, but he just set a goal as a dream with a time frame on it. So, we have this dream of what we want to accomplish, and so now we just need to put a time frame on it, and that kind of I think develops a little bit more of a sense of urgency. So we've got our goal written. So let's think about, do we really believe we can achieve that? Because if you don't believe you could, then, you're kind of, you're kind of not going to do it because you don't believe you can. So we all know how important that is to believe you can do that. So, do you believe this is a goal you can achieve? And now we need to think about what steps do we need to take to get us there. And another quote I kept hearing is that a goal without a plan, it's just a wish. And so, and I think that's what that $500 was. It was kind of a wish, and thankfully that came true. But, now that I want to do a little bit better than that, I'm going to have to put forth a little more effort. So that's what we're doing. All right. So this is what research says is that in order to accomplish a goal, you're going to need to have an action plan, steps that you want to take. And one piece of research that I found, and I think it was done maybe at Florida State University, but they did this study and they either told people that they needed to lose 2 to 4 pounds or they needed to lose 3 pounds. And what was very interesting is that the people in the group that were told to lose 2 to 4 pounds were more successful than the people in the group that were told to lose 3 pounds. And so, what they concluded from that study is that you're more likely to pursue and accomplish a goal when it's ambitious but flexible. So I thought as I was writing this action plan for myself, that I would keep that in mind and make it a little more flexible, and maybe I would be more likely to do it. And I'm big on a checklist. Lisa knows, or some of you that know me, I have my little sticky notes and I have stuff written on them. And it's just rewarding to me when I can check those things off. So, if you're like that, you may want to print out some kind of little weekly plan like this and just think about things you're going to do each week. And here's where I'm going to want some of your input. But here was what I thought I would put on mine. I thought one thing that I could do that would be very easy is check in on a certain number of existing clients. And so, um, you know, I have a lot of other duties at the office and things that I do. So I don't have a ton of time to devote to this, but I thought I could even go as simple as like check in on 3 to 5, make it that range, that flexible for each week, and just make sure that their income hasn't changed, that I don't need to update anything, that they've not changed jobs. And then in that process, ask them for a referral, and just, that would be a way that maybe I could bring in a little more business and build a better relationship with the people that I already have as clients. And then the second thing I thought I could do is visit so many places. Last month we talked about all the places you could go visit, like that low cost clinic that I was telling you about in my town. That's at the top of my list that I want to go visit. And just, lots of places that we talked about, all those places you could go visit, clinics, the referral partners that we can make. And so, doctor's offices, um, little restaurants, those small businesses that have, maybe 10 employees, like my vet's office, and she didn't offer any kind of health insurance for them. And so I was able to, enroll her employees that didn't have coverage, like through a spouse or something, in an ACA plan, which we might not be able to do that right now in the middle of the year. But I could go ahead and start talking to them and get that lined up
to deal with,
so that,
filling out this form to show that
let me
you have had coverage.
see if I can fix that.
So,
Okay, I think that's better. All right. So, anyway, what I was saying is, you could go ahead and start kind of getting some of those little businesses, talking to them, and then when open enrollment comes, you could already have it lined up that you could go visit them and help their employees get enrolled. So that's one thing I want to do each week. And one thing I thought about too with that, and Paul Todd was reminding me of this the other day, just work it into your daily routine. When I take my dog to the vet, talk to them about it. When I take her over to the groomer, talk to them about it. When I go to the boutique to look for an outfit to wear to something, talk to their employees or talk to their manager or owner about it. And you can count off that mileage too. So that's kind of a bonus. You get to, you know, keep up with your mileage as you're just sort of going about your daily routine. And so that's going to be my second action step, is to visit maybe 3 to 5 places a week. And, and I could do all that in one day, I think. But, and then I want to create a social media post. Every once in a while, I'll do a social media post, but I'm not consistent with it. And I think that's maybe a key. And, one thing I heard somebody say talking about that, and I don't know a lot about social media marketing. That's something I'd like to learn more about, but is to, make sure you create something that like people can like or share, and that is maybe even informative at times. It doesn't all just need to be call me, let it be things that would be beneficial to them. Kind of like how Aki does those Medicare minutes in our Courier Journal. people really read those and want that information. So maybe share helpful information too. So those are just some things I thought of that I could put on my weekly action plan. Does anybody else? I know there's people on here that have been doing it a lot longer than me. What else can we do, or what else could we don't want to overwhelm ourselves, but what else? Does anybody have something else good that they do that helps generate business? Okay. Well, I thought another bonus is just listen to a webinar, and you're
Mhm.
already doing that today, but just that helps to just build your professional knowledge. And I think I know it helps me feel more confident than when I go to talk to someone, because I feel like I know more about what I'm talking about.
So Heather,
And,
I'll tell you
uh-huh.
one thing. So
Yeah,
you
Lisa, thank
mentioned,
you.
and this is probably more along the lines for the ladies, but you mentioned going into boutiques. Ana and I, when we were partnering together, that was one thing that we loved to do on our marketing day. So we would go into these little boutique places and we would have our name tag on and we would say, look, we're not supposed to be in here because we're supposed to be working. And the lady at the counter would always say, well, what do you do? And that would create that conversation. And those are always great people for ACA because usually those people don't have insurance. They were never people for Medicare, but we always, at the time we're selling Medicare and we figured they had mothers or grandmothers or something that we could get that going. But that's great for ACA because usually those people don't have insurance. So what a great place to give out your card.
I love that, Lisa. So we need to wear a name tag and let that kind of be the way we break the ice to bring up that
Yes.
conversation. That's a
Yeah.
good idea. I like that. I can see you and Ana doing that. That's fun. Okay, that's a very good tip. And so, just in thinking about, and I know we've all set goals for different things, like maybe nutrition or whatever, and we get started and we're super excited, and then we kind of lose our consistency and fall off. So I tried to do a little research on how experts think you can be consistent, and things I found were to put it on your weekly task, on your, these things. Like maybe I have something called Zoho that we use at the office, and I that's where I put the things I'm going to do each day. And so I'm thinking I need to just put that on my schedule. Like one day that I'm going to go and market, so to speak, get out and talk to people, and then to incorporate the task into your daily routine. I think that's kind of like, as you're running errands or shopping or whatever, you could just kind of incorporate it into that. Or like I like to listen to webinars while I'm getting ready in the morning or while I'm walking my dog. And so, just try to incorporate those things into your daily routine, and then it's going to become more of a habit as well. And then one thing I heard a lot about is, of course, plan for obstacles. Last month we went to Disney World, so we were gone for, over a week, and that took up some of my time. I mean, it was fun, but it took away from me being able to pursue what I was wanting to do here. And then Clay had surgery on his arm. So, I just plan that those things are going to come up, and maybe there's some way. I know I did get some things done around the office before we went on vacation. You all know how to do stuff like that, but just plan for those obstacles and then monitor your progress. I think that's important to keep up with. Are you checking off those things every month? And one of the guys that I think was the best speaker that we heard in Greenville, he just kept talking about the importance of knowing your numbers. And he was super successful, and he would probably could just retire and have plenty of money and not keep up with anything. But he had 13 things that he tracked every month because he felt like that was vital to their success, to know, what their numbers were, how they were doing with things that they feel like are important. So, I'm going to try to do that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to monitor my progress. Am I getting these things done every week that I'm wanting to do? And then, is it paying off? Am I seeing any results from it? if I'm not, maybe I need to change what I'm doing. So, if that's something to think about too. And then another thing I kept hearing is about building your momentum when you're trying to accomplish a goal. And so to always start with the easiest task, like, I don't know, if your house is a big mess, you don't probably want to pick the hardest thing to do first. You maybe want to start by just like picking up the clothes out of the floor or whatever. And then once you get that done, you think, oh, I can do something else. So just start with an easy task, and it's going to help you build momentum to get to maybe something that you're kind of been putting off, or you think, I don't really want to do that part. So just start with something easy. So that brings us to, when do you start? And so the research says, just right away. And that the quicker you start, the more success you're going to have. And so, today we've already got that momentum. We've written a goal, we've thought about some weekly tasks, and you've already listened to a webinar. So if that's on your weekly task, you can mark that off. You've already got momentum, and just keep going with it. And anyway, and then celebrate your progress. I hope I will, and I hope all of you will, see that this will pay off, and that us being more focused and more intentional with what we're doing will help us be more successful. And then, of course, never forget to be generous. And anyway, that's all I've got for today. So did anybody have any questions or anything they just want to add? Well,
Alicia said to get an accountability partner. I agree with that totally. That's awesome.
yeah, yes, I thought I need that too. Somebody that's going to hold you accountable. That always helps, like with an exercise program or something too. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Paul Roberts did ask in the chat, any webinars that you recommend. I did put on here the peak training, but you might
yes.
recommend some others.
I did. Yes, I think the peak training ones are great. There's also like the SEP one that I shared from CMS. It was a really good one. It was in the slides from the last month's. That one's really good. I've listened to it twice. And then some other ones that I really like, their own Help Sherpa. The girl that does those, she does a really good job. And so there's a Health Sherpa 101 that, if you're just getting started with Health Sherpa, it's good. The 201's okay, but our Health Sherpa is not, I think they call it a white label. So it doesn't have all of those features, but it was still good to listen to. They have one on compliance. It's great. So on that Health Sherpa training, it's up in the top right hand corner. If you don't know where I'm talking about, it's like the agent training. You can click up there from your dashboard. Those Help Sherpa ones are great. They have several that I've not listened to that I've been wanting to listen to. And then there's some on the CMS. It may be Back to Basics. It's either CMS or Back to Basics that I've listened to a couple on there as well. I think it is the Back to Basics. If you'll go back and look at the resources webinar that I sent out, those slides, there I have a slide on there that's got links to different websites that have online trainings. And so, do those. Oh, and I can't forget our AHG page. And we're super excited because we've got a new Alabama Health Guidance page for agents that's coming out. We think we've got it ready, but it's going to have all the trainings then in one place too that we've done. So, maybe between all of those, that would be some good ones. And if you're wanting to do Manhattan Life, we've got some more trainings that we're going to do on that. We're going to be introducing that. So that's what I've been listening to lately. But anyway, thanks for the question. That's good. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then that's all we've got for today. And next month, we're going to talk about calculating household size and income. So it'll be a little bit more, information. So anyway, thanks a lot. And if you have any questions, just feel free to email me or call me. Y'all have a good day.